and to discuss point of care ultrasound in COVID-19 pandemic. Myself is Dr. Vikas Rai. I'm associate professor in the Department of Anesthesiology, Pain Medicine, and Critical Care at All India Institute of Medical Science, AIIMS, New Delhi. So, first we'll discuss this under the following headings. That is, why should you do ultrasound in a COVID-19 patients? What are the basics of lung ultrasound, and what are the pattern that we'll find in case of a COVID-19 patients? What are the utility of lung ultrasound in managing COVID-19 patients, and integration of this ultrasound data in managing a ICU patient? These two topics will be discussed by Dr. Rahul. Lastly, we'll discuss about the safety, cleaning, and disinfection of the ultrasound machine. So, as you all know, the COVID-19 is a disease which is caused by the SARS coronavirus 2. It started from China in December 2019. Now it's a global pandemic, and around till today morning, there are around 4 lakhs cases and 2.7 lakhs mortality. So this disease has a viral phase response and followed by a host inflammatory phase response. Is the starting of the host inflammatory phase, which is associated with all the symptoms, shortness of breath, and this is the time when the chest imaging abnormality in the chest X-ray and CT scan are positive, and this is the time also we can do the ultrasound to find out whether there is a finding related to COVID-19 or not. The severity of the disease is like 80% of the non-severe disease and 20% are severe disease, along with, from which 5% required in ICU care. So the presentation wise, as you can see from this one, it's mainly around the 6-7 days the patients start admitting and have a symptoms which require admission in the ward of the ICU, and till at that time the CT scan is always positive. Before that, you can have a positive CT scan and chest X-ray also. Coming to the fault after ultrasound in COVID-19 patients. First of all, is why focus in COVID-19. As you know, point of care ultrasound has many advantages, but in a COVID setting, it has specific advantages like, first of all, limited exposure to the personnel that is there, but limited contamination because of the fixed suit. If you want to imaging to a fixed X-ray or a stationary ultrasound machine or into the CT scan room, you have to shift the patient to there, which require additional manpower and risk of contaminations. Where the point of care ultrasound can be done at the bedsides, and it would prevent all these contamination risks. It establishes a baseline respiratory and cardiac functions, and it has low cost and effectiveness and may save PPE. As I told you, it can decrease the requirement of manpower to shift the patients, and it can be done repeatedly at the bedside. And it's rapid and it's sensitive to diagnose the pneumonia. Then the question arises, should we replace the ultrasound stethoscope with the ultrasound probe? In recent times, there is a lot of talk regarding this, and many prefer to replace the stethoscope with the ultrasound probe. And similar finding also in the COVID outbreak, where it is difficult to use the stethoscope because of the PPEs and other things, and more ultrasound can be used. Ultrasound, COVID-19 is a disease which affects multiple organ diameters, and among these, the lung, heart, liver, kidney, GI, brain, everything is affected. But at the point of care level, we can definitely however, it's basically a respiratory disease, and the lung is the most important organ affected. So mostly in this webinar, we'll discuss how to do a lung ultrasound at the point of care, which will give you management guidelines and diagnosis and monitoring guidelines for managing a patient of COVID-19. Basics of lung ultrasound. First question is that, is lung ultrasound possible? Because it's not that the air is the enemy of the ultrasound. However, if you see back, the old editions of Harrison say the ultrasound image is not useful for evaluation of pulmonary parenchyma, as the ultrasound beam does not penetrate the lung. But however, in recent times, the same book has a specific portion dedicated to point of care ultrasound or lung ultrasound. It is Daniel Lankenstein, who is in the modern era, who is first described the lung ultrasound, who is also father of lung ultrasound, and after that, it is evolved rapidly. Coming to the limitations of lung ultrasound, it has said that the bone and there is a lot of bone in the thorax which will prevent, but however, it is found that despite the presence of the ribs, at least 70% of the pleural surface is still visible and can be imaged. Again, air in the lung is the enemy for the ultrasound beam, but we can image till the pleura, and pleura is the mirror of the lung. below pleura is air. Till the air is there, we can see the mirror image of the pleura. However, when the air is replaced by something else, we can see those pathologies also. The principles of lung ultrasounds are 7 basically. Always use a simple equipment. And in the lung ultrasound, the gas and fluid have follow the laws of gravity. Then the gas is the upper portion and the fluid in the lower portions. Standardized area can be defined. All signs mostly arises from the pleural line. Static signs are mostly artifact, and all dynamic signs mostly start from the pleural line. Almost all life-threatening conditions have some pleural disorder that can be diagnosed. How to do the ultrasound exam? It can be done in a supine position, sitting position, and prone position. Mostly in the supine position in a emergency ward or an ICU or a ward, or a medical ward. However, in the settings of COVID, most of the findings are limited to the posterior and basal region. So examining in a sitting position is very preferable whenever the patient can sit, so that the posterior portion of the, that is the posterior and basal portion, can be examined properly. Also, most of the time with COVID-19, the patient may be in a prone position where this posterior access will be easier. However, in a prone position, assessing the anterior portion will be difficult. Probe, a convex probe, a microconvex probe, linear or phased array probe, everything can be used, but the International Society recommends a microconvex probe, which is not easily available. So most of the time we go with either a linear probe or a curvilinear probe. If you use a linear probe, the superficial structures, the pleural or the subpleural pathology are easy to identify. However, convex probe is better for interstitial syndromes. So in case of COVID, mostly the pathology is around interstitial syndrome or pleural pathology. So both a curvilinear probe and a linear probe can be used. However, if you want one phased array probe, also can be used. Before the scanning of lungs count, the machine setting should be, if there is a lung preset, that should be used. Otherwise, you should use abdominal preset. First drill for interstitial syndrome or B lines, you use a moderate depth, that is around 10 centimeter, and for the pleural abnormality, you focused on the pleura. If you are using a focus, 1-point focus at the pleura should be used, and all the filters should be disabled, like compounding imaging, harmonic imaging, before a lung ultrasound examination. Lung ultrasound technique, coming to how to do the ultrasound, this can be divided into 8 zones, 4 in each side, on the basis of the this is the anterior and lateral portion, and that is the parasternal line, anterior axial line, and posterior axial line, and both the anterior and posterior lateral portion are divided into upper and lower part. So total 8 zones can be examined. This is mostly practiced in ICU or AD setting when the patient's making the patient lateral or prone is difficult. However, as we told in a COVID patients, mostly findings are in the posterior and basal region. So examining this posterior examining these posterior areas is much more important, and but this should always be done. So a 12-lung zone approach is better preferred. Recently, in COVID settings, Solari et al. Has proposed for international standardization for using lung ultrasound in COVID patients. In that proposal, they have asked for 14 zones, and we start from the posterior portion, because most of the findings in COVID are in the posterior region. How to scan? This will cover most of the areas, and no area will be skips, because in COVID there are spared areas or skip lesions are there, and this is the technique you should follow. Coming to lung ultrasound, there are certain signs we should be seeing, and the first sign is the identification of the pleural line. Whenever you put a ultrasound probe like that, you can identify the ribs which produce the acoustic shadow, and there is subcutaneous tissue above, and you can appreciate a hyperechoic line, which is the pleural line. And this thing is known as a bat sign, where the wing of the bat represents the ribs, and the body and head represents the pleura. Although it does not look like a bat, but it's classically described as the bat sign. This you can image or you can scan the lung by a vertical manner or by a transverse manner. In a vertical manner, you have the guidance of the rib to identify the pleural line. However, in a transverse scanning, you don't have these things. But the transverse scanning is beneficial because you can scan much more area of the lung. And in COVID patients, when you are scanning the lung, some people advocate for using a transverse approach. Another approach, you always start with this longitudinal approach, and whenever there is positive finding, at that time you turn it, your probe, to a horizontal scanning, so that you can scan that area in details. Then the lung sliding sign is basically the parietal and visceral pleura sliding over each other. So that produces simmering type of movement, which is known as lung sliding. So basically, lung sliding signifies two things, but that is both the pleural are opposed or adjacent, and they are moving with the change in lung volume. So anything that will hamper these two things will that the pleural sliding will be absent. Like if the pleural are separated by air like pneumothorax or in pleural effusion, if they are either in a pneumonia case or in a fibrotic lung disease or fluorodesis, or there is lack of movement like this endobronchial intubations or very hyperinflated asthma, COPD, those cases. Then the lung sign here again, this is because of the transmitted pulsation from the heart to the pleura. This signifies both the pleural are adjacent to each other. You can compare it with this is the normal lung sliding, and here hardly the movement of. So this is known as the lung pulse. This is the transmitted pulsation of the heart. Then the A lines, which are reputation artifact. Whenever the ultrasound beam comes to the pleura and is reflected back, each time it produces a mirror image, and which are equidistant. So these are known as the A lines. A lines because these are artifact and these are mirror image of the pleura. A line signifies air, but it does not signify whether the air is in between the pleura or below the pleura. So whenever there is a normal lung, there is below the pleura, there is air, the air line will be present. Similarly, if the air is present between the pleura also, that is pneumothorax, then also the air line will be, A line will be present. The B lines are basically when there is increase in density of the lung. So in between the alveoli or in the interlobular interstitium, there is the increased density of fluid, which is now through which the ultrasound beam can be transmitted. And these produces ring down artifact, and these are known as B lines. Certainly, B line has several characteristics like these are chromatal artifact, always arises from the pleural line, moves with the lung, it goes to the edge of the screen, laser-like discrete structures, and it obliterates the A lines, and these are hyperechoic like the pleural line. So most of the time, the pleural line has all these 7 features. However, there are some lines which are non-B lines and may be confusing. So these are first like chromatal artifact, like these are small artifact which arises from the pleura and they move with the pleura also, but they don't reach the edge of the screen and they fades away. And basically saying the B line is also a type of chromatal artifact. Then there is the J lines. These are similar to the B lines. However, they are fixed to the pleura. They don't move with the pleura and they don't obliterate the A line. The A line will be visible. Only artifact so that you don't confuse with the normal B lines. And there are E lines which are mainly seen in subcutaneous emphysema. Here the E lines don't start from the pleura, rather than it starts from different layers from the subcutaneous tissue and it goes to the base of the screen. When E lines is present, everything is below is artifact. We cannot comment about that person. Mostly it's in emphysema, subcutaneous emphysema. Coming to the lung pathology, there are main 4 pathologies: pneumothorax, alveolar interstitial syndrome, consolidation, and pleural effusion. In the COVID-19, the pathology of lung pathology is basically limited to the alveolar interstitial syndrome and consolidation. So we'll discuss details about these things a little bit as it are related to COVID-19. First of all, alveolar interstitial syndrome. This means the presence of B lines, or there is a deaeration of the lung, increase in density of the lung. So as soon as in the normal there will be A lines will be present, but as the aeration is decreased and the fluid content and the density is increased, the B line starts to appear. And first of all, they are scattered, but then are diffused and in larger numbers, which is significant alveolar edema or severe interstitial syndrome. Then decreases as there is a total deaeration. So and there is some fluid, the consolidation develop, and there is no air. You can see the lung tissue here. So till that, these are all artifacts we are visualize. When there is a consolidation, we can see the real image. Again, the B lines can be classified whether there is interstitial edema or alveolar edema, because the interlobules are separated by 7 millimeters and the acinas are around 3 millimeters. So they are around 7 millimeters apart. So you can say there is no alveolar edema, only interstitial edema is present, and whether there is diffuse and gross and less than 3 centimeter, maybe alveolar edema is present. Here you can see there is a single B line here. So single B line is maybe present normal in the bases, so it is not significant. Anything more than equal to 3 V lines are pathological and of significance. As you can see here, there are multiple most of the screen, and here the V lines are the diffuse. Along this is the course in which there is loss of variation of the lung parenchyma and increase in lung density. Conditions where B lines can be found are like pneumonia, viral bacteria, pulmonary edema, ARDS, contusions, fibrosis, and post-radiation changes. So how to differentiate this is that it is based on the distribution of this, the timing, clinical scenario, on pattern recognition. If there is B line that is more than 3 B lines per intercostal space, then maybe diffuse or focal. Focal means they are unilateral or less than 2 areas for hemothorax. If there is chronic onset, that means some neoplastic or pleural disease. In the acute onset, in a trauma setting, it is pulmonary contusion, and in a medical settings, it is atelectasis or pneumonia or infarct. However, in case of diffuse, that is more than 2 area per hemiplex. In a chronic setting, it is fibrosis, and in the acute settings, it may be cardiogenic edema or ARDS. It is much more important to differentiate between the cardiogenic edema, whether the V lines are because of the cardiogenic edema or ARDS, and this can be done by looking at the following features. Like in the ARDS, with the V lines, there will be subpleural consolidation like here. There will be thickening and irregular pleura, and the B lines are not uniformly distributed, and some spare or skip regions are there. They are not uniform. However, in the cardiogenic pulmonary edema, the pleura is normal and they are equally distributed most of the time, and there is no consolidation, or subpleural consolidation is less frequent. Pneumonia, when the alveoli are filled with fluids or inflammatory cells, the lung becomes atelectic, and the ultrasound can penetrate the lung and reveal the tissue structures deep to the pleura. So there are certain signs in the ultrasound, that is the red signs, tissue signs, air bronchograms, and visual and vascular structures to identify the consultation with the help of lung ultrasound. First, this is the early pneumonia. You can find V lines with subpleural consolidation. As you can see here, this is the subpleural consolidation and some V lines. These are features of early pneumonia. Then in the translobar consolidation, the tissue-like sign is there. So where the lung looks like a whole of the lobe is involved, and the architecture of the lobe is featured, but whole of the lung looks like a liver. So it's known as hepatization or tissue-like sign. And you can see various air bronchograms also. In a non-translobar constitution, the thread sign is present. Basically, the thread sign is like the interface between the consolidated lung and the aerated lung. So these are fractal representation of the consolidated lung and the aerated lungs, and these are features of non-translobar consolidation. Static and air bronchograms, because of the patent bronchus, and if they are moves with respiration, that is centrifugal movement, that is known as dynamic air bronchogram, which is much more suggestive of the pneumonia. Static air bronchogram may be visible both in atelectasis and pneumonias. These are the air bronchograms. Then inside the consolidation, the flow is normal fissure. So if you put a color Doppler, you can see the flow of the vessels inside the consolidated lung. So with that, we'll see what are the pattern of ultrasound that are present in a COVID-19 patients in lung ultrasound. Before that, we'll describe something related to, because normally the chest X-ray and CT are the normal modality to assess or image the lung. So we'll discuss first what are the CT finding and the chest X-ray finding in a COVID-19 before going to lung ultrasound. In the chest X-ray in COVID-19, it has been found that mostly 80% of the patients have a positive finding during certain point of their illness, and the consolidation is the most common finding, and bilateral involvement is there, and it is mostly peripheral and lower zones are involved. So as we discussed, as is there bilateral involvement, peripheral and lung zones are involved. So those can definitely assessed by a lung ultrasound. And this you can see there's ground glass opacity in case of COVID positive patient. In the CT finding in a viral pneumonia, if you see the findings of previous outbreaks like the SARS outbreak in 2003, the CT findings suggest there is ground glass opacities with consultation. Again, the lower lobes are involved with subclavicular and peripheral distributions. The similar findings are positive in terms of the MERS outbreak also, which was in 2019. If you come to the COVID-19, the current scenarios, this is the article published in February from the Chinese author, and here also you can find that 78% of the patients have either a ground glass opacity or the consultation, upon which presence of ground glass opacity with consultation is around 41%. Presence of consultation without ground glass opacity, which is typical of the bacterial pneumonia, is very rare. Again, bilateral lung involvement is there, and the lower lobes are much more frequently involved. So again, from the both the X-rays finding and from the radio CT finding, it is clear that the COVID-19 mainly involves mostly the lower lobes and the posterior portion, which can be assessed by the lung ultrasound. In this study, they found that in the first initial days after the symptoms, in the 0 to 2 days, the CT scan is only positive in 46% of the cases with all the findings. And next 3 to 5 days, 91% of the patients have a positive scan and CT scan, and more than 5 days, 96% of the patients have any types of finding in a CT scan. So again, these data can be extrapolated into lung ultrasound while doing a lung ultrasound in the COVID-19 patients. The in the CT they find mainly round morphology of ground glass opacities and some KG priming pattern also. Again, there is a higher peripheral distribution. As you can see in the early stages, 0 to 2 days, there is some sparse ground glass opacity. 2/3 of cases maybe unilateral round opacities are there. In the 3 to 5 days, the ground glass opacities are bilateral now, and they are much pronounced. Again, peripheral distributions and affecting the lower lobes and with certain amount of consultation. In the late stages, you can see there is denser consultations, there is some crazy fabbing, organized pneumonia are present mainly after 5 days. So from all these data from the chest X-ray and CT scan in COVID-19, it is found that the lesions in the COVID-19 present in the peripheral, subpleural, and basal and posterior. Hence, it can visualize from the ultrasound. So this is the first article published by the Chinese authors in February of 2020, where they preliminarily studied the ultrasonic manifestation of the pulmonary lesions. Again, they found posterior field of both the lungs are mostly involved. There is V lines, waterfall signs, pleural lines, and unsmooth, discontinuous, and interrupted. Subpleural regions are there, or constellation are there. Air bronchogram sign or air component signs maybe can be seen, which is suggestive consultation. And it involves interstitial tissue have localized thickening and edema, which is suggestive of the crazy fab. In this study, they correlated the finding of the CT with the ultrasound finding. Like here, there is a ground glass opacity in the periphery, which is represented as a V lines in the lung ultrasound. If there is a dense ground glass opacity, then the number of V lines increases, and the diffuse V line and confluence of V line are seen here. You can appreciate the thicker or the unsmooth pleura. Lung lesions, and there here again subpleural consultation, which is seen as interrupted pleura and some ways of consultation. In the latter stages, some crazy fabbing pattern is seen in the CT scan, which can be found in again as a consultation in the subpleural region. Latter, this Indian Intensive Care Society released a letter where they also correlate the lung findings, CT finding of the lung and the ultrasound finding. Again, both thickened pleura are seen. However, in case of ultrasound, it is always subjective estimation of the thickened pleura because you cannot measure the pleura, where in CT you can measure the thickness of the pleura. V lines suggestive of ground glass opacities and constant V lines suggestive of infiltrates. There may be some subpleural consultation, transglobal consultation. However, pleural effusions are very rare, which is also found on all types of viral pneumonias. In early stages, there is only fecal V lines. However, alveolar interstitial syndrome develops with progressive illness and critical illness develops. So, to summarize, the typical findings in the COVID-19 cases of a lung ultrasound findings are in the pleura, pleural are irregular and maybe thickened mostly in the early stages. There are subpleural consultations, V lines which becomes confluent and diffuse as the disease progress. There is sprayed areas or skipped regions, usually present in the early stages of the disease. Lobar and non-lobar and translobar constellation with air programs may be fine. Small pleural effusions may be present, but larger and moderate pleural effusions are rare. So if you classify in different finding in mild, moderate, or severe and critical findings, you can finding in disease like this. In mild cases, there is a normal A pattern is there. As the lung aeration decreases, the disease severity increases from moderate, severe, and critical. So in case of a moderate disease, there is irregular pleural lines. B lines increase in number and in distribution, mainly focal, multifocal, and discrete. In case of a severe disease, the B lines number again increases. There is diffuse or coalescent B lines, and small subpleural consolidations are there, and they started to involve mostly. Previously, they are in the posterior and basal region. Now, in the upper and anterior region also started to be involved. In a critical stage, there is consolidation, maybe non-translobar or translobar consolidation may be there. Air bronchogram will be present, and mild pleural effusion may be there, but however, moderate or larger pleural effusion is very rare. So with the deterioration, with the lung aeration decreases, so it goes from the A line to partially aerated B lines to complete deaerated consolidations. And the improvement or recovery also follow the opposite path. In this case, this is the some less than finding from the COVID patients. As you can see here, the pleura is definitely thickened along with some B lines. As you can see here also, there is interrupted or broken pleura. B lines, here you can see the number of B lines are less, maybe 3 to 4 in a field. However, in this year, there are multiple B lines, which is covering more than 50% of the screen area. If they progresses, they may be diffuse V lines, which may represent say white lung like this because of the multiple V lines which are diffuse and confusion. This is also known as a white lung. Waterfront sign is which is basically there is a subpleural consolidation from which there are a diffuse V lines, which is waterfall sign. Here you can see there is some subpleural consolidation and there is the waterfall sign. Sprayed area, these are many characteristics. Areas are characteristics of lung ultrasound in case of COVID, where you can feel patchy lesions. Like here, you can see these are the V lines, but in between you can see the A lines. So this is typical of the COVID or any viral pneumonia, and mainly found in case of initial stages. Subpleural consolidations, small subpleural consolidation and big lines can be seen, which are main again peripheral distribution characteristics of COVID. The basal scanning also you can. This is the diaphragm, and you can see there is a little bit of pleural, and you can see the basal subpleural. Larger consolidation develop eventually. They are programs and straight signs. You can see that the straight signs here, that the border between the consolidated and the aerated lungs. And here also you can see little bit of pleural effusion and a larger consolidated air. Consolidation with larger effusions are but moderate to larger size effusions are rare. Whenever they are present, you always think of pulmonary bacterial infection or heart failure. Okay, there's a larger effusion and there is a collapsed lungs, and this is the lung tissue with all air bronchograms. So coming to the role of ultrasound in COVID-19, it can be in settings like in the emergency department setting, in a medicinal ward or ICU, and in different settings the role is different. Whether when it is used in an emergency department setting, it is basically used for screening or as a adjunctive to the diagnosis. When it is used in a medicinal ward, it is mainly used for monitoring, guidance to therapy or restart restriction. In ICU, it's mainly for guidance to ventilation or weaning from ventilation and in resuscitation measures. And with the disease severity, the patient is mainly shifted from the emergency to ICU. And similarly, the skill requirement to do all these implications in different setting is different. The screening and diagnosis for the screening and diagnosis, a basic lung ultrasound is required. However, for guidance therapy, you look at a higher skills And in the ICU, required other skills apart from the lung ultrasound skills to integrate the data and have a good guidance for the management. Regarding the lung ultrasound basics, that can be learned easily with maybe few normal scans and few abnormal scans, and the learning curve is really less. However, it may take some time, get some experience and skill to do a higher degree of lung ultrasound in the medicinal ward or in the ICU. Limitation of the lung ultrasound in COVID is this, that you may miss pathology deep in the lungs because you can only image the superficial things. However, most of the time these images are peripheral and superficial. If the only isolated lesions are present only deeply, those can be missed. Accuracy is influenced by training and experience. There is limited data because it's evolving field and is being used. The use has been because we have in certain larger wave, so we are starting use it much frequently, but the concrete evidence is still not there. And there is a potential for human transmission of COVID, as COVID is a droplet or fomite based transmission, and these things can be a vehicle for the transmission of the disease. And so take home message is that use ultrasound on with each available opportunity. Go with both the curvilinear or the linear probes. Scan at least 12 joints. Look for posterior and basal lesions. Use a long and more techniques. Look for COVID-specific patterns, and always take care of the safety, cleaning, and disinfection of the machines and safety of yourself. However, in the end, it's the machine don't have a brain, so you have to use your brain to interpret the images and use those things for patient management. Thank you. We'll take the question in the end. Now, Dr. Rahul will talk about how to use this data of how to use the lung ultrasound and integrate the data in the ICU manager settings. Dr. Rahul.
Good afternoon. I'm Dr. Rahul, and I'll be talking about the use of point of care ultrasound in COVID-19 pandemic.
So PPT is not on.
Okay. Okay. So I'll be starting with role of sonography in COVID-19 pandemic. The overview will be like use of lung ultrasound in managing COVID-19 patients and integration of ultrasound data in ICU management. If you talk about the utility of lung ultrasound in COVID-19, it can be used for triage. It may be used for risk stratification and increase in diagnostic sensitivity. It can be used for characterization of disease, monitoring disease progression, and it may be used for prognostication. There is a huge role of sonography, point of care ultrasound in ICU management. As we all know, that if you're dealing with any COVID patient, you have to wear personal protection equipment. And practically it is impossible to use a stethoscope. It is very cumbersome. Also, the contamination risk is there. In chest X-ray, the problem is if you are dealing with 10 to 12 patients in triage or in ICU, and like 2 patients are coming every 2 hours, it is very difficult to move heavy X-ray machine. Radiographer have to wear PP. It's like wastage of the resources. Whereas lung ultrasound or ultrasound is a compatible machine. It is a small machine which can be used at bedside. The sensitivity in the diagnosis of pneumonia or lung pathology is very good. It is very sensitive. It can add to history. And nowadays, point of care ultrasound is the integral part of physical examination. It can be used in the pre-hospital setting for triage, though recommendations are not there. Yes, it is helpful basically in facilitating appropriate resource utilization, testing where the patient should be shifted and all. In this study, authors compared conventional imaging exams which were performed in first 4 weeks of the COVID-19 epidemic to the same time frame in 2019, early month of 2019. And they found that if you use lung ultrasound, then you can decrease the number of X-ray scan and CT scan. Basically, by doing this, we can decrease the resource utilization, and we can shift that resource to a better area. This is a flow chart. If a patient is there with you with history of fever, cough, fatigue, dyspnea, or with non-COVID-19 contact, or patient is having a history of return from high-risk area, or patient is residing in hot zone, then we have to do initial diagnostics like rapid flu test and COVID-19 PCR. We have to see the pulse, we have to see the saturation. Lung ultrasound should be done. And if there is no supplemental oxygen requirement, A lines are there, like here. If you can see, the pleura is smooth. Here the pleura is smooth. There are A lines. That means patient is relatively fine. Patient may stay at home, or you may ask the patient to go into self-quarantine. Whereas if there are some B lines, but there is no supplemental oxygen requirement, again, you can ask the patient to go home. But here in India, we are living in lockdown. So the movement of the patient from home to hospital may be problematic. Also, the travel time from home to hospital may be more. In these circumstances where the limitations are there, we can admit the patient and may do follow-up monitoring. Like in this case, B lines are present, and if a patient is requiring oxygen, here B lines are there all over the lung phase. This kind of patient should be admitted to the ward. Viral testing should be done as per institutional guidelines. Daily lung ultrasound and point of care ultrasound must be done to see the progression of the disease. Okay. If the patient lies in this subset, that consolidation is there and patient is requiring oxygen, in these circumstances, patient should be admitted at a monitored ward or high dependency unit because the chances of deterioration are very high. So what we should do? We should do daily ultrasound or point of care testing in these patients. To sum up, if there is no supplemental oxygen requirement, A lines are present, we can ask the patient to stay at home and go to self-quarantine. If supplemental oxygen requirement is not there, but B lines are present, we can shift the patient to home or can admit. It depends upon the institutional policy and the circumstances under which doctor and patients are living. Third scenario, when supplemental oxygen is required, but B lines are present, admit the patient. And if consolidation are there, the disease is widespread, better you admit the patient to ICU or high dependency unit. If you talk about the diagnostic capabilities, it's very clear that lung ultrasound is not a diagnostic tool for COVID-19. It cannot be used for that purpose. But yes, there are certain problems with CT scan, certain problems with the PCR. Like PCR, the time taken to get the result, whether it is negative or positive, it may vary from 6 hours to 24, maybe 48 hours, depending upon your facilities. The sensitivity of CT scan, as per literature, is better than RT-PCR. So it's an indirect kind of derivation that lung sonography more or less equal to CT. CT is better than RT-PCR. So we can use lung ultrasound to support diagnosis and management. But if you talk about the evidences, they are not there. Maybe after 1 or 2 months we are working on it, we may have some data to prove it or to refute it, both ways. If you talk about the characterization of the disease, it was discussed by Vikas, but I'm going to repeat it. Repetition will bring revision, and revision is learning. So pleural line abnormalities are present in almost all the patient. Like in this study, which was done in 20 patients, it was kind of the study which was done in the earlier phase of the disease during the February month. Here, the pleural line abnormalities were present all over in all the patients. Bilateral involvement was present, like B lines were present in bilateral lung zone or all the lung zones. Consolidation was present in severe to severe and critically ill patient, around 40% in severe and 54% in critical. Here, the pleural effusion was not there in moderate and severe patients, but it was there in critically ill patients. Deep vein thrombosis was not there in moderate to severe, but it was there in critically ill patients. So we can say that if there is a patient who is having pleural line abnormality with bilateral lung involvement, and in sicker patient, if consolidation is there, that means that most likely this patient is having COVID-19 pneumonia. Whereas if a patient is having pleural effusion and patient is not that sick, we may say that, okay, there is something wrong. Maybe patient is having some bacterial infection or bacterial infection over COVID-19. Okay. If you talk about the progression of the disease, pleural line remains there, but B lines over the period of the time, they tend to decrease. Like towards the end of 4th week, there were less B lines as compared to the 1st week data. Now the question arises, okay, there are certain abnormalities which presented COVID-19, but how we may distinguish COVID-19 with other form of pneumonia? Like in this video, if we can see, there is pleural effusion, there is collapse and consolidation. This amount of pleural effusion is not commonly seen in COVID infections. If this amount of pleural effusion, this much collapse is there, most likely it is some superimposed bacterial process. The other thing is this pleural effusion, yes, maybe because of superimposed bacterial infection or heart failure. If it is because of the heart failure, the distinguishing feature like B lines or the bat lungs may be there in COVID-19 as well as in heart failure patient. The pleura is the key. In COVID-19, pleura will be irregular thickened, but in heart failure patient, it will be smooth. In echocardiography, point of care ultrasound, you may find some decrease in the left ventricle ejection fraction or some diastolic dysfunction. There may be some abnormalities in ECG. Of course, there will be some history related to it. So on the basis of all these things, we can distinguish the disease pathology. If you talk about monitoring of the disease, as discussed by Dr. Vikash, here patient, the lung aeration score may improve or it may deteriorate. Improve means the worst possible lung aeration score is 36. The best is 0. So if a patient moves from 0 to 10, that means patient is deteriorating. Or if a patient moves from 10 to 5, that means aeration is better. That means patient is improving. So on the basis of lung ultrasound, doing lung aeration score, we can say that, okay, my patient is improving. This is a beautiful story regarding monitoring of disease progression. This is Dr. Yale. What he did, he suffered from COVID-19 infection and daily he did lung ultrasound on himself. And then he posted these pictures on Twitter. Now you can see here, it is day 11 for ultrasound finding. Here there are B lines, the pleura is thickened, there are subpleural consolidation here. On day 21, you can see the pleura is smooth. It's very smooth. There are A lines. This is how we can monitor the disease progression by using ultrasound. If we talk about the management or how lung ultrasound can change our management. So what we do is, we do lung ultrasound, anterior side of the chest and posterior lateral side. If there are A lines, everything is normal, then patient needs no intervention as per at this time. But if it is abnormal, B lines are there, consolidations are there, then we can clearly say that it is abnormal and we have to identify the pattern. If the pattern is like diffuse B lines are there all over the lung fields, then we have to give PEEP. These patients are possible PEEP responder. Whereas if the disease is there in the posterior part, there are consolidation, atelectasis, lungs are wet in the dorsum, then possible it is quite possible that if you give proning session, they will improve. If you talk about the use of sonography in ICU, okay, it can help in the evolution of the disease. We can track the evolution of the disease. We can monitor lung recruitment. Here, I want to make one thing clear, that lung recruitment maneuvers are under clouds. We cannot clearly say that lung recruitment maneuver will help the patient. But you can see that, okay, this patient may improve. Say after giving lung aeration, if the B lines, the number of the B lines, say they were 7 in a field, if that goes down to 3, that means patient is responding to the lung recruitment. Same is with prone position. We can see the response and response of prone position. Now, this is the lung aeration. Say this C is abnormal, C is consolidation. If a patient jumps from consolidation to B, that means B lines are there, around 3 lines in a field. That means there is some improvement. Re-aeration score is improving. But if a patient jumps from normal to consolidation or normal to B2 or B1, A lines, they change into B lines. That means patient is deteriorating. So on the basis of this, we can say, okay, we have done maneuver. Let's say we have prone the patient. Whether the patient is improving or not, we can assess this by using ultrasound. We can also make certain decisions related to weaning the patient from ventilator. Now we all know that these patients, they present with myocarditis at times. If let's assume the ejection fraction is 25%, maybe 30%, and now we are trying to wean the patient by giving a TP's trial. What happens when you give TP's trial is there is a negative swing in the pleural pressure. They will become more negative, maybe 20, maybe 30. And there is sympathetic surge. This negative swing in the thorax, negative intrathoracic pressure, that leads more and more fluid into the lungs and lead to pulmonary edema. So what you can do, you can scan the lungs prior to doing TP's trial. If there are increase in the B lines or consolidation appears from B2 to C, that means patient is deteriorating. There is no point in continuing weaning trial at that time. We should do certain things, like we should give diuretics to remove some fluid. We have to make the patient towards the best possible fluid status. We can take help of inodilators. So for weaning, we have to do lung ultrasound, diaphragmatic ultrasound, and heart ultrasound. These are things which will help the patient. For the prognostication part, if a patient is rapidly deteriorating from, say, patient was having A lines, now patient is having consolidation all over the lungs. So that means patient is deteriorating. With the help of echocardiography, cardiac biomarkers of inflammation like interleukin, CRP, we can put all these things into the frame and may use all these things for prognostication. Yes, literature is not there to support it because that we are still in the thick of the disease. Literature maybe after a few months or few weeks, it may be available. Coming to the integrated approach in ICU management, in this study, approximately 5% of the patient, they died with myocardial damage alone, whereas in around 33% of the patient, respiratory failure was associated with myocardial damage. So we know that myocarditis is a problem. According to this statement by ASA, this is American Society of Echocardiography, focused echocardiography must be used for detection and characterization of pre-existing cardiovascular disease. It may be used for early identification of worsening cardiac functions. This worsening cardiac functions may be of pre-existing disease deteriorating, or it may be because of the infection per se. It may help in monitoring and examination. Also, it may help in identifying and identification and management of the life-threatening problems like a pericardial tamponade, or the myocarditis, which is leading to shock, a hypercoagulable state, which is leading to DVT and pulmonary embolism, left ventricular systolic dysfunction. So with the help of point-of-care ultrasound, we can do a lot more things. Here, in focused cardiac ultrasound, what we should do is, we should see the left ventricle. This is the short axis view, parasternal short axis view, to see size, global functioning of the heart. Left ventricle, to see whether there is some myocarditis, acute coronary syndrome, cardiomyopathy, or what are the reasons of shock, whether it is because of some obstruction or whether it is because of decrease in the preload or decrease in the contractility of the left ventricle. Same is with the right ventricle. These patients are associated with decrease in the right ventricle function. This may be because of the cytokines or maybe because of the increase in the pulmonary artery pressures that leads to right ventricle dysfunction. Because of the hypercoagulable state, these patients may land up into pulmonary embolism, for which we can see McConnell sign, tricuspid regurgitation will increase. Also, the relative size from right ventricle to left ventricle may be used for it. Few reports are there that patient presented with pericardial effusion and at times with tamponade. COVID per se have no impact on gross regurgitation or stenosis, but there may be some deterioration of pre-existing cardiovascular disease. If you talk about the fluid status, it may be used. We may see subcostal IVC. I'll discuss this thing. To use IVC for the fluid status, we should know what are the limitations of it, because it is very easy to do and lots of people are doing it routinely. But there are certain limitations that for heart-lung interactions, there should be adequate tidal volume. If tidal volume is less than 6 ml, 5 ml per kg is there, it will not help. If acidemia is there, if intrinsic PP is there, if a patient is a case of COPD, all these things, open abdomen, these are the limitation of IVC use. However, if we see how to do it, in a subcostal window, we derive IVC subcostal window, then M mode is used to see the respiratory fluctuations or respirophasic variation in IVC. Here we can see, like with respiration, if it is here, there is no change with respiration, it is ugly, distended IVC. That means there is no point in giving fluid here. But here, if you see, if the collapsibility index is more than 12 to 13, 14%, you can give some fluids. Okay. There are two type of two indices here, collapsibility index and distensibility index, which depends upon whether the patient is on mechanical ventilation or patient is breathing spontaneously. We can acquire a 5-chamber apical view to see the left ventricle outflow peak velocity variation. Here, pulse wave Doppler is thrown over 5-chamber view to see the peak velocity. And if the peak velocity variation is there, respirophasic variation is there, more than 12 to 15, in a hypotensive patient, you may give some fluids. The other thing is, like we know, it's a hypercoagulable state. So DVT chances may be there. You have to do the DVT maybe every 3 to 4 days. And if a patient is sick, critical ill patient, you may do every 3 days. So if we talk about the methodology, the comparison of 2-point versus 3-point point of care ultrasound technique, there is hardly any difference whether you adopt 2-point focus technique or 3-point focus technique. There are equal chances of getting the disease or picking the disease. So we can do, or we can go ahead with 2-point compression ultrasound technique for the diagnosis of deep vein thrombosis. The other utility is insertion of the line, invasive line. So for the pre-procedure, what we may do, we can assess for any thrombus or any stenosis. During procedure, we can take the help of ultrasound. It is recommended to use ultrasound if the facilities are available to put central lines. For arterial lines, recommendations are not there, but as such, in our practice, we commonly use it. The other use of ultrasound is for the confirmation of the line. Here you can see this is the wire. It is going in the internal jugular vein. It is not puncturing the posterior wall. That means it is well placed. So by checking the central line with the help of ultrasound, we can decrease the amount of resource, the usage of PP, the contamination and exposure of the people. To diagnose the position, there are certain things we must do. We should exclude pneumothorax, especially if you are putting subclavian. Then we should exclude line lying in contralateral internal jugular by putting the ultrasound, linear ultrasound probe towards the other side of the neck. And the other thing is we have to do flush test. In this flush test, agitated saline is pushed through the yellow port, and if subcostal or the four-chamber window is taken, if the agitated saline reach in the left atrium, right atrium within 2 seconds, that means our line is well in place. If it is taking more than 2 seconds, that means there are certain doubts it is not in the place. Okay, so also it may be used to insert arterial line even in babies. There are various protocol nowadays to practice. In COVID patient, this is DLET protocol. It is DVT, lung, echo in 10-minute examination protocol. Here, DVT is assessed in both the limbs. Then, as Dr. Bikash tell, lung is assessed in the echo. Parasternal long axis, short axis, in the short axis, AV view and papillary muscle view is taken. Then in the 5-chamber, apical 5-chamber, subcostal 4-chamber view is acquired. IVC is also acquired to see. So there are many protocols. You can use any protocol you want to use, but there is one thing clear, that the point of care ultrasound has an important role in the management of patients with COVID-19, and it should be used routinely in triage, in ICU, in SDU, and also in wards. Thank you. So we are open to questions now.
Dr. Vikas,
Well,
disinfecting slide is there.
actually, first we'll discuss regarding 2-3 minutes regarding the cleaning and disinfection of the ultrasound machine. Okay. So coming to the cleaning and disinfection of the ultrasound machine in COVID era. First of all, again, each institution have their protocol for cleaning and disinfection of the machines, and those should be as per accordance to the manufacturer guidelines and logistic availables. The machines and probes should be cleaned and disinfected before and after use of any patients. There are certain guidelines that has been published by many, like American Institute of Ultrasound in Medicines, American Institute of Echocardiography, European societies, and these are the links from which we can find out how to go ahead and for the disinfection. Coming to some definitions, cleaning is known as removal of the visible soils from the object on the surface. For disinfection is the process that eliminates many or all pathogenic organisms except bacterial spores. Low-level disinfection is known as a disinfection where everything is removed, but the microorganism tuberculosis is not removed and bacterial spores are not removed. Most of the ultrasound machine and probes require a low-level disinfection unless otherwise they directly come with any fluids. Coming to sterilization is the process that destroys or eliminate all from those microbials from the lab. Coming to the prevention of the contaminations, it is advisable to use it whenever it is needed. Use dedicated machines. Use small machines, pocket machines if available. No extra supplies should be on the machines like extra tissues, extra jellies. Those should be not there. Use appropriate level PP during the scanning. Also during the scanning, apart from upper level peeping, cover the machines and probe whenever possible. Do not plug in the machine and use single gel pouches rather than a big gel pouch box. Coming with the level of preparation or cleaning that is required, if you are using the transducer in an external way or in interventional procedures or in internal way, most of the time we're using in an external Okay, so most of the time we'll be using this in the external transducer procedure or interventional way. If there is intact skin, no cover may be required, only non-sterile gel is required. If there is a contaminated skin or non-intact skin, yes, cover is used depending upon sterile or non-sterile use. And in an interventional procedure, if there is catheter placement or biopsies, single-use cover which are sterile should be used and sterile gel should be used. And after the procedures, here the cleaning should be done, that is removal of the all gels. A low-level disinfection should be used, and after that it will be rinsed and dried. Similarly, here also a low-level disinfection used unless otherwise direct contact with the body fluids or mucous membrane is there, but there is a high level of disinfection can be used. Protect the system, probe, and the operator. That is, the system should be covered, but make sure not to cover the cooling point of the machines. Clean the systems and probe with the local guidelines and the instruction manual. Again, clean the probes, disinfect the probes with the same procedures. The thing is that both the transducer and the system are to be cleaned, followed by disinfected. And for the disinfection, that is the low-level disinfection, sodium hypochlorite is advisable. However, ethanol and isopropyl alcohol can also be used. Coming to the disinfection, the probe, first thing is the cleaning of the probe. For that, you have to adequate level of PPE as per the where are you doing, whether in the ED or ICU or in things, and as per the local protocols. Disconnect the system. First, clean the probe using wipes or soft tissue moistened with the cleaning agent, and after that, do not clean the wet or metal part of the connector. Okay. Followed by you do the disinfection. Here also disinfection with in a probe. There is the A, that is the probe proper. This is the cable and the metallic connector. For the disinfection of the probe head, you can immerse it in aqueous solution of sodium hypochlorite for 5 minutes. Others like ethanol can also be used. In some machines, the cable is also immersible. In that case, you can immerse the cable. Otherwise, for the cable and connector, you spray with a 60-70% ethanol solution. However, again, metal part, this is the metal part, should not be sprayed. Allow the immerse for at least in 5 minutes. Then rinse the probe A and the cable with soaked or deionized water and let it to dry. Cleaning of the systems, again cleaning of the machines. Turn up the machine, unplug the cable, clean the system with wipes or soft cloth moistened with mild detergent, which are available, and okay, so then clean the probe connector and with the soft cloth. Disinfect the system. The system has to be clean and dry before disinfection. Use wipes or soft cloth, again moistened with a high level of disinfection, depending the level of the exposure, and wait until the system is completely dry to turn on the system next. The machines, some people advise the machine should be cleaned twice between the patients, once with the PP on and with the clean, and once with the clean gloves on after the doffing. So take home message is that always use it judiciously. They use ultrasound only when it is necessary. Use it. Ultrasound is not a diagnostic modality. It's only art or supportive basis. Use focus to minimize use of other things like chest, CT, or movement, so that manpower is less required. Use a dedicated machines whenever it's possible. Scanning, use a probe cover. Have a exam loaded on the machine before entering room. Do not plug in the machine during this one. Have an assistant if possible. Again, cleaning, end of the study, enter the cleaning mode inside the room. Clean twice, one inside the room before removing the PPE and one after removing the PPE with the gloves on. Use the standard things that is advocated by the company to wipe these things. Otherwise, you can use a soft with a moisture this one. Thank you.
So now we have
take some questions.
I want to answer a question from Dr. Jayesh Shaket. The question is, can lung ultrasound eliminate the need of chest X-ray? Am I audible?
Yes.
Yes,
Okay.
sir. Yes, sir.
The answer is yes, you can eliminate the need of chest X-ray if you're using lung ultrasound. But the thing is, for the sake of medical legal purpose and for the sake of for this assessment or the daily assessment, you need to save the pictures. If you are saving the pictures, then you can use lung ultrasound. There is no issue, and it will decrease or will eliminate the need of chest X-ray.
Another thing I want to add is that it has been found in many pathologies where the lung ultrasound or ultrasound has a better sensitivity and specificity for diagnosis rather than chest X-ray. Like certainly for pneumothorax, it is much more sensitive or specific. So that will be thick. So in different pathology, it has been found to be much more beneficial than chest X-ray. But if you want to say it in generalize that it can eliminate chest X-ray, may not be not now, but in certain pathology it is definitely better than chest X-ray. And with regard to COVID, it is coming, new data are coming up. Maybe in future we can see whether it is a alternative for X-ray or not. Also, definitely it has replaced the daily X-ray protocol that has been followed in many ICUs with daily ultrasound or scannings of the lungs and other systems.
Because can you answer this question?
Sorry, there is a question: is there any long-term effect on probe crystal screening using alcohol-based sanitizers or disinfectant? Yes, there is certain concern probe by certain specifics machines companies. So if the machine companies specify that alcohol-based consumption should not be used, then you make sure the footprint should not be used with alcohol-based solutions. Other portion of the cable and the head that can be used. If the company does not say that, then you can use this alcohol-based solution. Then another question is that how can I understand the probe are disinfected? So for you have to follow the recommendations and the time limit for the wet time and the dry time that has been given by the product that you are using or the company that you're using or the guidelines that has been published in different forums. That will ensure that it has been disinfected. But if you have to make sure, because these data or recommendations are there after using that for that process and that period of time, and then they have tried to isolate the virus from that. So in a practical setting, you have to follow those things. You don't have an indicator to find out whether there is disinfected or not. You only follow the protocols and the wait time or dry time that has been recommended by this one. Any other questions? Dr. Rahul?
Yes. Yes. Please. Yes, please.
So there is a query that whether we can use blue protocol in the COVID-19 patients or not.
I think we can use it. There is no issue, but the problem is we have to evaluate the posterior part. The disease is more concentrated towards the posterior part, and the blue protocol, it is limited to flaps. That's the limitation. For detailed examination, we have to scan the lungs, the hemithorax, in all 6 joints. That's the answer.
Yeah. Again, it can be used, but it is better to use in a proper scanning all 12 or 14 zones, whatever is available.
Yes, that's true.
Any more questions?
Another question is like how long do you take to perform a lung ultrasound now?
How long you take? Actually, yes. It has been normally, if you follow the blue protocol, it says that you do it within 2 minutes. However, in a COVID settings, there are escape lesions in the initial stages. So you have to do a scanning thoroughly with at least all the 12 joints, and at least at each point you wait for 1 respiratory cycles or 5 to 6 seconds, whatever it is, to find out any finding. So, and always use a lawn mowing maneuvers as described. So if you want to do it 12 zones proper with both the lungs, both in a sitting position and a supine position, then it will at least take you from 5 to 10 minutes. You have to spend certain times to find out the lesions in the initial stages.
There is a question from Vidushi Sharma. Which probe are you using for lung ultrasound, and which should be used as a standard? The answer is like our Indian population, the space in between the ribs is strong. So to assess the deeper structure, like to see the B lines and consolidation, we are using echo probe or phase linear array probe. And to see the superficial structure of the pleura, we are using linear probe. So it is the mix of both. In case of emergency, we are using phased array probe because it will cover more area in a limited time. So we can pick life-threatening condition within few seconds. So that's the beauty of phased array probe. And to see the structure, superficial structure, like pleura, we are using linear probe.
There is another question is from that. Is it necessary to assess the diaphragm dysfunction in focus? Yes, focus is very useful in assessing the diaphragmic functions, but you have to again find out where it is used. If you want to diaphragmic function, mostly it will be used in a case of ICU or maybe in a case of medical ward. In the emergency department, it is mainly used as lung parenchyma and pleural pathology are sought after. And diaphragm, as you can find out the diaphragm dysfunction in a ventilator patients, or it will assess you or help you in weaning process if you use properly. Yes, it can be used, and focus diaphragm dysfunction is one part.
Okay, there is
Yes.
a question. I want to answer it. Is lung ultrasound a good prognosticated indicator for the progress of the disease? So as of this time, there is no data to support this statement. But if we see or if we speak logic, if the lung is bad, because we know that if the disease severity is high, it directly correlates with mortality, as myocarditis is. So if a patient is on ventilator and the disease is subpleural consolidation are there in almost in the bilateral chest involving whole chest or lung, then the chances of survival will be poor. So it is the logic, but to support this logic, evidences are not there.
So there is another question. They say that Dr. Ramit Gupta says that OPDs are open up, and in the present scenario, everyone considered to be COVID positive. So if we use a proper disinfectant procedures, it is difficult to do ultrasound. So doing normal OPDs, what precautions would we do? You think? So first of all, there is a difference between the point of care ultrasound and the standard ultrasounds. What we told, if you are using a point of care ultrasound mainly in the ED or ward and ICU, so preferably you have a dedicated machine, and preferably you have a dedicated machine that can be used, and you use the following pathology. But if you are using in a radiology or fixed suit, then you are assuming all the patient to be positive. Then you have to use a proper ultrasound machines and disinfection procedures, which may take some time. However, whatever it is, the time is definitely less than a CT scan, because in a CT scan room, it is required around maybe 2 to 3 hours to disinfect it after one scan. So ultrasound timing is much more lesser than that. And another thing is that although in our countries wireless probes and wireless pocket ultrasound machines are not available, or because of the different rules in a certain country may be available, if those are available, you can use those things, and that will be of great help, because you can have a machines which is far apart from the patient. Again, there is another question is, what is the learning curve of the use of lung ultrasound? Lung ultrasound, basic lung ultrasound is very easy. The learning curve, they say around, if you want 10, 20 normal scanning and 10 scanning with some pathology after a thorough didactic lectures is sufficient enough. Certain level of expertise to do the scan. However, for a much more explorative and ICU use or a collaborative use with other data from the echocardiography, you will definitely have a better or larger experience with it. Again, Dr. Amit has again questions that, but then we should disinfect our machines after every patient, or we should do a COVID test for every patient. Actually, these things should be as an institute or government protocols or guidelines. Per se, doing a test for every patient as per of now in our country is not possible. So at least you can have a good screening team, so which can screen whether the patient is having a any symptoms of this COVID or not. And these, I agree that there is asymptomatic patients also there. So in a if you have a screening team, you can use ultrasound to find out whether there is any findings which is suggestive of COVID or not, so that you can have a decreased load on the main radiology department which is doing the proper ultrasound machine. Again, disinfecting the machine have to better rather than doing for other investigation, radiological investigations. So
There's a question: how many times a day we can perform lung ultrasound? Uh, Basically, it depends. Like if you're doing it once or twice a day, that gives you fair idea about the disease progression. But if you are doing it to see the result of a maneuver or result of intervention, say you have done proning and now you want to see pre-proning, you want to see whether the patient where the disease is. If it is towards the dorsum of the lung, it is considered to be sensitive. So sensitive means that means proning will help. And after proning, you may do to see the progression of the disease. So it is like that. It depends upon the patient's condition. As such, there is no need to do it every 2 hourly, 3 hourly is not going to help. There is a question from Lynn. Do you recommend to do lung ultrasound rather than CT thorax? It is not like that. CT thorax is ideal, but ideal world doesn't exist. Say if you are doing CT scan, you have to move the patient. We do CT scan to make a diagnosis or to see what else you can do. Say there is a patient who is very sick. Peak is around 12, maybe 13 on one vasopressor, maybe two vasopressors. It is very difficult to shift the patient. So the problem is logistics. If logistics is not the problem, then CT scan is the best thing. That's the answer.
I want to add another thing is that it has been found that CT's sensitivity is much more than the RT-PCR standard test that we're using. And ultrasound has been found to be equally sensitive to that of the CT scan. Although the latter data is not clear till end, or the data is low level of data is available or evidence is available, maybe in the future we'll be have a ultrasound machine for COVID things. Apart from all the benefits that Dr. Rahul benefit, you preserve the manpower that are exposed. You preserve your CT scan suit because you have to disinfect it in 2 to 3 hours after the CT scan. Also, you preserve PPE because less manpower is involved. And always it's not possible to do a CT scan in all patients, that as Dr. Rahul said, because the patient profile. In those cases, CT scan is maybe in near future we have some data in which say the sensitivity of CT scan for diagnosing or COVID is as equivalent to CT scan. Then we can use this. Till now, it is definitely the data are promising, but we don't have any solid recommendations.
There is a question. In the current scenario, ultrasound is the best investigation for a COVID patient. It is not like that. To diagnose or to say that the patient is COVID positive or negative, the best is RT-PCR or CT scan if you can do it. Ultrasound is done to see the disease progression and to make out whether your management will change. Say if like which patient will respond to P or which will respond better to a proning session, or how you can change the hemodynamics with the help of whether the patient needs vasopressors or inodilators or fluid. All these things can be changed by using ultrasound.
but you should remember that it is not a diagnostic test for COVID till
Yes,
now.
it is not.
And another interesting story I want to share that, but in certain scenario, resource limiting scenario, the RT-PCR result comes very much late. Like Dr. Rahul described, Dr. Chan from Spain, who was doing and posting his own lung ultrasound scans. In his case also, his wife also becomes positive, but that there is because of logistic issue, there is a time lag between the result. But before that, he can predict with the lung ultrasound that she has all the features of a typical COVID pattern lung ultrasounds. So it is not a diagnostic test for COVID, but it can assess or it can be an adjunct to all the measures that we are clinical features and X-ray findings, or this ultrasound finding can be adjunct to the diagnosis. And you can have a timely management protocols also, apart from the progressions and those things. Dr. Rahul, there is a question.
Yes. Is it necessary to train the staff in ICUs in focus in large volume centers? Yes, if you train them, it is good because you can utilize your resource in a better way, and also it will change the management. Okay. In large volume centers, the other beauty is that you cannot do CT scan or X-ray. It is very difficult to move the patient. So lung ultrasound or point of care ultrasound will take, in experienced hands, it will not take more than 8 to 10 minutes. And within 8 to 10 minutes, you may say that, okay, this patient is having this pathology. And on the basis of these findings, I'll prone the patient, or I'll give PEEP, or I'll shift the patient to SDU, to ICU, to ward. So you can change lots of things. So I think we should train our staff in the ICUs so that optimum amount of care may be given and the resource utilization may be optimized.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. Dr. Bhalla is there.
Yes.
Okay, so we say Surishta.
Okay. Thank you. Thanks a lot for joining. And it was a beautiful interactive session. Thanks a lot. Abhishek, you can take care of rest of the things now.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, sir. Thank you for joining and making this event successful. Thank you so much, sir. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.